Seizing central real estate, this pawn boldly claims its territory, opening diagonal avenues for the queen and bishop. This solidifies the pawn chain, aiming for a robust defensive setup against white's central initiative. Asserting central dominance, d4 seizes space and prepares to open lines for piece development. Challenging the center immediately, this pushes for dynamic play and opens up lines for queen and bishop activity. Opening the center, white immediately invites piece activity and potential tactical skirmishes, aiming to exploit the exposed d-file. Reclaiming the pawn immediately maintains central pawn presence, vital for future development, and contesting the d4 square. Challenge the center immediately, creating dynamic pawn tension and aiming for an open game. Developing a knight here prepares for castling and pressures white's central pawn structure. Solidifying the central pawn structure with this knight sortie offers white excellent attacking prospects. Solidifying the pawn chain, this prepares to recapture with the bishop and contest central space. Developing the knight reinforces central influence and prepares for castling, asserting pressure on black's pawn structure. Developing the bishop to e7 solidifies the pawn structure and prepares for kingside castling, a prudent step in this Caro-Kann setup. Unlocking the c-file for artillery deployment, white immediately challenges the pawn center and opens lines for active piece play. Recapturing the pawn immediately reopens lines, preparing for a central pawn struggle and developing a key piece. Initiating development by bringing the bishop into the fray, aiming to control the crucial dark squares and potentially prepare for castling. Developing another knight to the central square, the young knight now eyes the d4 pawn, aiming to disrupt white's pawn structure. Safeguarding the monarch clears the path for active piece deployment towards the center. Securing a queenside outpost for the knight while simultaneously creating a potential pawn lever opens dynamic counterplay possibilities. Reinforcing the e4 pawn while preparing to pressure the d-file is a sound, multi-purpose maneuver. Boldly contesting the queenside space, black ignites a pawn storm to challenge white's central control. Sacrificing the bishop on d5 dramatically opens the a2-g8 diagonal for your queen, aiming to exploit the now exposed black king. Reclaiming the pawn with x5 solidifies black's central pawn structure, creating a crucial pawn chain that will influence the game's strategic flow. Developing the bishop here pins the knight, forcing black to consider an awkward knight retreat or expose their king further. Instinctively securing the king, castling reaffirms defensive integrity while preparing for potential central maneuvering, a vital step in this dynamic Caro-Kann structure. Trading bishops simplifies the position, opening a diagonal for white's queen while relieving pressure on black's king. Reclaiming the knight frees up the f-pawn and prepares for kingside pawn pushes, aiming for dynamic counterplay. A knight repositioning to a more central square, aiming to support central pawn breaks or join an attack on the queenside. Repositioning the rook to defend the knight frees up the d-file for future action. Repositioning the knight to b3 offers greater flexibility, eyeing the c5 outpost while defending the d4 pawn. Securing the open c-file offers crucial counterplay and prepares for future pressure. Deploying the queen to d2 shores up e4 and prepares a potential queenside assault, aiming to exploit black's slightly cramped position. Shifting the rook to the c-file aims to contest it, but abandons the kingside cover, creating potential weaknesses later. Shifting the knight to the queenside aims to challenge black's cramped development and gain influence on the open c-file. The knight boldly ventures forward, eyeing central control and potential forays towards the king. Asserting control over the open c-file with this rook immediately pressures black's central pawn structure and prepares for further offensive action. The rook's relocation to the 6th rank offers potential pressure, though it leaves the king's defense somewhat exposed. Disrupting black's rook's new post, this threatens immediate pawn annexation, forcing a defensive recalculation. Shifting the knight to d6 cleverly aims to disrupt white's pawn structure while preparing for potential counterplay. A bold thrust into the enemy's camp, aiming to disrupt black's queenside harmony and exploit the open c-file. A risky gambit aiming to disrupt white's central control by sacrificing initiative. Shifting the queen aims to redeploy it aggressively, perhaps to target the weak pawn on d5 or support a central push. Exploring the open c-file with the knight offers counterplay and challenges white's pawn structure. Centralizing the rook now aims to bolster the d-file and create a stronger presence against black's potentially exposed king. Repositioning the rook to the open file creates immediate pressure on white's d-pawn and prepares for future action. Rerouting the knight to a more active central square, seeking improved piece coordination and attacking prospects. This exchange simplifies the position, potentially opening lines for your rook but inviting white's queen to a more active square. Reclaiming the open file, white aims to activate the rook and potentially pressure black's king. Reclaiming central space after the exchange, this knight maneuvers to support a potential d-pawn push or regroup for queenside activity. Solidifying the kingside pawn structure, this subtle adjustment aims to prevent any immediate breakthroughs by black's pieces. Bringing the king to the center offers a surprising refuge and prepares to activate the piece. Repositioning the queen to control key central squares and prepare for a potential queenside advance. A bold repositioning, aiming to activate the knight and challenge white's central dominance with fresh attacking potential. Repositioning the knight to b3 aims to eventually challenge the c5 square and pressure black's queenside pawns. Reclaiming central influence, this maneuver prepares to challenge white's queenside foothold. A bid to reorganize pieces, seeking better pawn structure and potential attacks on the queenside. Reconnecting the queen to the center, this move aims to activate her into the coming skirmishes, potentially supporting advances on the queenside. A bold attempt to trap the rook and gain space on the queenside. Developing the bishop to an active diagonal, it prepares to challenge white's control of the center and potentially support pawn advances. Clearing the c-file opens diagonals for the queen and rook, aiming to exploit black's pinned knight. Reuniting the queen to the queenside seeks to challenge white's pawn majority and potentially create counterplay. This redirection of the queen to g5 aims to exploit the slightly exposed black king and potentially create new attacking angles. Retreating the rook to the 6th rank abandons central control and invites further queenside pressure. Unveiling the queen forces a critical king decision, potentially clearing the way for active rooks.